All right, good morning or afternoon, depending on, or evening, depending on when you're watching this. Today we're going to move on to the next part of our algebra unit, which is looking at solving one-step and multi-step equations. And we are also going to be doing a bunch of word problems in this one. So it's really important that you guys focus in on what the problems are asking you. I am not a big fan of sometimes what textbooks do to try to trick you with word problems, which is to give you the numbers as words and then the numbers also as numbers in the same problem. So we're just going to focus on either doing one or the other with ours. So what is a one-step equation? So for instance, a one-step equation would be something like this, where it would be something like n plus 7 equals 13. And notice that I said equation instead of an expression because now we have our equal sign. So one step means that we're only dealing with one form of mathematical process, which in this case is addition. So what we would do is we would, again, this is more of a review for people. I'm going to do this extra step, n plus 7 minus 7 equals 13 minus 7. So we're going to cross these off and isolate the variable, and we're going to get n equals 6. Okay, so that's a perfect example of a one-step mathematical process, one-step equation for addition. Let's do one where we have maybe one where we're doing subtraction. So n minus 9 equals 22. Okay, so we're going to, instead of moving it as a negative, it's going to become a positive. So our next line is going to say n equals 22 plus 9 and n equals 31. What I do want us to get into the habit of when we're talking about algebra, one of the communication pieces I know in high school is going to be that you guys are going to have to show your guess and your check, right, to review. So if we take this one and we review it, what we're going to do is we're going to take what we solved for n and we're going to input it into our original statement. So 31 minus 9 should equal 22. 31 minus 9, it's 30. 31 minus 9, yes. 22 plus 9 equals 31. 31 minus 9 is 22 and 22. Okay, so you may have to show this. Now in one-step equations, it's much more simple. Let's talk about two-step equations, okay? I'm not going to, you know what I'll do is I'll just give you two more. I'll give you, let's say 3x equals 21, right? So when we're dealing with multiplication single step, we're going to just isolate by dividing what's there. So 3x divided by 3 will give us x. 21 divided by 3 will give us 7. And while we're at it, why don't we just do x over 6 equals, let's pick a number. X over 6 equals 6, okay? So in this case, what we need to do is we need to, in order to work backwards from division, we're going to use multiplication. So we're going to multiply the x by 6, right? We're going to multiply this by 6 because then it will be 6x divided by 6. And that's something that not a lot of people see often when they do the division. It looks like this. So it would be 6x divided by 6, and then it would be 6 times 6. So our next line, when you have 6x divided by 6, our next line would be x equals 36. And I don't know if you can see that from where I'm at, but x equals 36. It's a smaller board today for some reason. Okay, so that's a really good start with what we need to do. So in addition, if we're doing an addition problem, it becomes a subtraction problem on the other side. If it's a subtraction problem, it becomes an addition problem on the other side. If it's multiplication, we're doing the inverse operation, which is to divide it. And if it's a division problem, we're multiplying both sides by what the denominator is. But we also know that in some cases, we're going to have multi-step equations, especially going into grade 9. A lot of the stuff you're going to have is a multi-step equation. And that means that there will be probably a variable and a constant, and you'll have to do more than one just basic step. So let's take a look at something that we did. Now, 2n minus 2.5 equals n plus 5.5. Okay, so the reason it's called a multi-step equation is because you're going to have to do two different things, right? You're going to be moving the variables together, and you're going to be moving the constants together. So let's do that right now. So we're going to move our variables to this side. So when we say n, it's the same thing as saying 1n. It's more appropriate to do that. I don't know why it's not focusing. It's so weird. So let's bring over now I'm going to take the first step and I'm going to go slow. So I'm going to actually move this number first. Okay, just so you can kind of see the process. So it's going to say 2n minus 2.5 plus 2.5 equals n plus 5.5 plus 2.5. This is so strange why it's so small today, this screen. I may have to boost it up after this. So let me just rewrite that so you can see it on the screen. I'll just write like Edith and Tori and Crystal. I'll go really small. 2n minus 2.5. See, it's so hard to concentrate on writing properly when you're writing this small. Plus 2.5 equals n plus 5.5 plus 2.5. This 2.5 and this 2.5 have been added to get rid of that. So right now then our next line would be, I can write this a little bit bigger, 2n, right? Because we've eliminated those, equals n plus 5.5 plus 2.5 is 5.5 and 2.5. 5 and 2 is 7, is 8. So now I gotta get rid of this n. So n minus n plus 8 equals 2n minus n. So 2n minus n is just n and plus 8. So we're left with that, n equals 8. Okay, so that's a good example of doing a multi-step equation. Another way of doing a multi-step equation is through solving equations through distributive property. Do you remember that we talked about distributive property as when we're given something, we have like an x, and then we have a 3x plus 4, and we multiply everything by itself. So that's kind of another way that we can do multi-step. So I'm going to do one right now. 4 times 5x, let me move this all the way over, plus 6 equals 12. So here's our multi-step, right? So now we got to do this. 4 times 5x is 20x, plus 4 times 6 is 24, equals 12. And now, I'm going to run out of room here, aren't I? So let's do the next line. We're going to get rid of this, isolate the variable by getting rid of this constant. So it's going to be 20x equals 12 minus 24. Okay, because we're bringing over a negative number. Let's continue it over here. So 20x equals 12 minus 24 is negative 12. So now I have to figure out what? I have to figure out how to isolate the variable. So I'm going to get rid of this 20x by dividing that by 20 and dividing that by 20. So now I'm left with x equals negative 12 over 20. So I could reduce this. I can keep it in fraction if I wanted to. I could reduce it and say, okay, how do I reduce it? What goes into both? So I could say it's negative, so 2 goes into it 6 times, 6 over 10, but that can be reduced even further, right, into negative 3 over 5. And then I could really easily just find out the decimal. But I could also do this, 12 divided by 20, which would give me x equals negative 0.6. Okay, so again, another multi-step one. I'm gonna give you guys one to try on your own, please. And so could you work on this one? Could you do this multi-step one? It's gonna be negative 3 and 2x minus 4 equals 18 plus 3x. Okay, can you try that one for me? Take a pause and see what you guys come up with. Ready? And go. So you're back. Let's see how you guys did. So we noticed that we have variables on both sides. So we're gonna first have to, expand this. So negative 3 times 2x will give us negative 6x. Negative 3 times negative 4. A negative times a negative always makes a positive, right? Or at least in integers does. 2 wrongs make a right here, apparently. So negative 3 times negative 4 is going to give us positive 12 equals 18 plus 3x. Okay, so now I'm going to move our variable. So in this step, I'm going to actually move both. I'm going to move this variable over to this side. I'm going to move this over to this side. So I'm going to have now negative 6x minus 3x, and I'm going to have 18 minus 12. So I'm going to have negative 6x minus 3x. So a negative number minus a number is always going to get a bigger number. So it's going to be negative 9x equals 6. So we know that we're going to get a decimal here. So our next line is going to be, I'm not going to put this here because we're going to do a step here. I'm going to divide this by 9 and this by 9. So 9x divided by 9 is x. And I could reduce this. I could say if I wanted to, one of my answers could be 2 over 3. Oh, sorry, I have to divide this by negative 9. So this has to be divided by negative 9. So it's going to be negative 2 over 3. Or if I want to, I can say, okay, what is 6 divided by negative 9? And that will give me, what'd you guys get? Negative 0.66 with the continuation, or negative 0.6, right? Okay, so hopefully you got that. I think we're gonna do a couple more for application once we get to the application section. So I'll see you guys in about 2 minutes.